What's up, Grinders? Welcome to Week 15 here for NFL. This is the NFL First Look. I am BritDevine, joined today by Paul Boggslit Arrington and Stephen Young, a.k.a. Stevieptfl. He's filling in for the mailman, Mr. Beermakers fan. Stevie, thanks for joining in today. How's it feel to be on the show here with me and Boggs?
I got the call up to the big leagues now, so I got to work on that mailman left hook, Karl Malone. But I'll fill in for the beer man this week.
So real quick, I see you're in a sling there. Why don't you tell everyone what happened to your arm this week?
All right. So we were moving a 1,400-pound safe yesterday, and let's just say I lost the battle when two guys let go, and my elbow is a bruise like a golf ball, and I dislocated the shoulder. So it's very painful. So little pain meds and some special drink, and we're good.
Have fun writing all those Roto-Grinders articles and banning everyone from chat. a lot of button clicking with the left hand.
Yeah, it's the old typewriter, 11111. So.
All right, guys, we are brought to you by DraftKings. They sponsor the show here. In case you didn't know, they have the final Millionaire Maker of the season here. It is a $3 million championship, $27 buy-in. It is currently 31,000 people in it out of 126,000. They've added an extra, what is that, $700,000, $800,000 to it for the final weekends as we go into the final couple of weeks here for NFL. So make sure to check that out. Anyone can be a millionaire for just $27 this week. I will say I am going. Normally I've been going at FanDuel for theirs. This week DraftKings reeled me back in, and I'm going to be going after this with plenty of entries this week. Stevie, how many are you going to have?
Probably anywhere from 15 to 30 on my half. I split some entries with a couple people, so it's probably going to be 15 to 30 for me, and then 30 on FanDuel. So just my normal actual share of this tournament every weekend.
Boggs, you going after this hard this week? They also have the $300K Hot Route Championship. That's a $100 buy-in, a $300,000 tournament. And they have the Quarter Arcade Championship, guys, for a quarter. It's a $25,000 prize pool. First place, $2,000. 117,000 people in that thing.
Yeah, not going to throw in 1,000 entries in the Quarter Arcade, although some people might. But I'll have my fair share.
That's punishment.
Million Maker, and fortunately I came close a couple weeks this season, so I've got a little bit saved up for it, but we'll see.
Let's get into the Thursday night game here. We have the Cardinals at the Rams. Stevie, we're going to start with you. You take the home teams filling in for beer here. And my question to you is, what % owned is this Rams defense going to be against the Cardinals with no good quarterback? Andre Ellington's out. I think the Rams defense is the play for these Thursday games. I think they're going to be very highly owned, though. Outside of that, do you have any interest in the St. Louis offense, who's kind of showing some signs of life?
No, I definitely have a good amount of shares of the St. Louis defense. They've had two really good games back-to-back. Gets an offense, like you said, struggling to move the ball in general. Missing probably their best player with Ellington. It looks like Fitz might play this week, but he's still limited at practice, so kind of have to keep an eye on that. But all over the St. Louis defense for me, if I had to guess, they're probably going to be in the 30% range owned. If you want to go really contrarian, you can fade them and just fade this game in general. If I'm going anybody on the offense, it's probably only Jared Cook because the Arizona's tight end defense is really terrible. So they're probably the two guys that I'm looking to. Me personally, it's going to be the St. Louis defense if I play at all on Thursday night.
Yeah, for the Thursday night game, Stevie, this week, I think we've had some good matchups that really haven't had a lot of people that. What am I trying to say here? They haven't been. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. What I'm saying is I want to fade this game completely. I want to play a lot of Thursday games because the average general public, people who want some action on this game, are going to put in a couple players from this game. And I think that's a mistake this week. And I haven't played Thursday games in maybe 4 or 5 weeks. And I think I'm going to go after him hard this week because I expect the random Joes to be playing a lot of people from this game. What do you think about that?
Was that directed towards me?
Both of you.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the strategy to go. I mean, you see it so often where guys, like you said, just want some, action in the game because the game's on. It's the flavor of the day or the week. But I don't think this is necessarily a game you want to load up on. We've been burned by that several times. It seems like every time we say that,
This game is not going to be 37-28. I can almost guarantee it, which means it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. So I know we'll see, but you're right. It's not a game that I'm going to be targeting heavily. I do agree with you guys that the Rams D will likely be highly owned. If you're playing in a Thursday through Monday tournament, you might see them the highest owned, and for good reason. Ever since Carson Palmer went down, the Arizona offense just hasn't been the same. They're dealing with injuries in wide receiver. Larry Fitzgerald's not 100%. They lost Ellington. Now they're running back by committee. Really, the only person I would target in this game would be, and it's only a tournament play, would be Michael Floyd, simply because he's the guy that does run those vertical deep routes. And despite how good St. Louis's defense has been recently here, a couple of those cornerbacks, Janoris Jenkins is one of them in particular, very aggressive and can be beat deep. So, it's not a situation where I think Floyd is going to go off for, 6-7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown, but a long bomb here or there, could definitely easily, secure him some nice value at a 4K price, but I still think there's some better options this week.
No Kerwin Williams for you against the St. Louis defense? Come on.
Well, he didn't look too bad last week, and that was against a fairly tough Kansas City defense, but it's still a running back by committee. I looked at it today. Still, Bruce Arians said that Stephon Taylor is still going to start that game, and it's just a disaster. It's a three-headed monster, not something you want to dick around with this week.
Yeah, I'm going to be avoiding this game, except for that St. Louis D. I might sprinkle them in there, but again, this is a perfect week where I want to play these Thursday games and fade the Thursday game completely on DraftKings. Wait till Sunday when all the news comes out on injuries and kind of swap my lineup around and get some better players in there. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Steelers at Falcons. Let's get to the Sunday games here, Stevie. Julio Jones looking very questionable to play this week right now. Let's pretend he's in. Do you like him? And if he's out, who is Matt Ryan going to throw the ball to? Roddy White, Harry Douglas, Devin Hester, any of these guys interesting to you in a GPP?
You got to kind of be careful with Douglas because he's questionable as well. So got to keep an eye on his news. If Julio plays, he's definitely in play for me. Pittsburgh giving up over 20 fantasy points a game to wide receivers this season. Julio back-to-back 10-plus catch games. So definitely my favorite option. I like Matt Ryan for GPPs this week. I'm going to be targeting him quite a bit with Julio. Without Julio, it doesn't matter to me. Pittsburgh is 25th against the pass this year, so I'm really high on Ryan this week. I like him more at home. He's at home. Pittsburgh team traveling, so I'm all over some Matt Ryan this week. And like I said, if Julio plays, I'll be on him. If Julio doesn't play, I'm going to be firing up Roddy White quite a bit.
Yeah, I think if Julio's out, news comes out later in the week. Roddy White, $5,800 on DraftKings makes a great price. Boggs, let's go to the other side of the ball here. To me, it's Big Ben. It's been this way for a couple of weeks now. Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. It's those three guys and only those three guys. And I'm going to ask you this question now since we're talking about Le'Veon Bell. Is he your number one running back this week? To me, he is. There are some insane matchups at running back this week. You have Bell at Atlanta, DeMarco Murray at Philadelphia, Arian Foster at Indianapolis, Forte at home against the Saints, Jamal Charles against the Raiders. Some very good matchups. Who is your top running back this week?
It's Le'Veon Bell, and
it's Bell for me, no question as well.
Well, yeah, it depends on the site, because if you're playing on a site that doesn't value PPR at a full point, then that kind of drops him down for me a bit, because the one question mark, the only one curious part of this, terrific offense is the offensive coordinator, Todd Haley. It seems like every time they have at least 3 opportunities each game at a first and goal, and he tries to throw the ball 3 times, and they don't convert. So you always got to question that when you're considering these games and you're starting Le'Veon Bell and paying up for him. But regardless, on a site like our sponsor DraftKings, he's dynamite because he's involved in the passing game. easily, a top 5 running back this year, and he just, he really looks like LaDainian Tomlinson out there. Just has so much vision, smooth when he runs the ball, and you don't have to worry about anyone vulturing any of his carries. That's another key part to Bell's game. With you on Big Ben and Antonio Brown. Although I believe my top team stack last week, the Saints, didn't really pan out. So I'm going to be a little hesitant this week. I think that with a full slate of games, that you're not going to see a guy at the top win $1 million with Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Big Ben.
I could easily. I mean, in these big tournaments, it's the team that goes off for 40 points. Ben, Brown, and Bell. If you did that last week, I don't even want to know. That's like 110 fantasy points. That could easily be repeatable this week.
Yeah, but you gotta understand on the flip side, Atlanta, they're starting to run the ball a little more. I just don't think that there's enough time and enough possessions to go around for all 3 of those guys to win you a big tournament. I think that you really gotta read some more injury news. If Julio Jones is out, then I think that gives the uptick for Bell. But if Julio Jones is in, that game could easily turn into a shootout, which means the Big Ben and Antonio Brown combination are the way I would go. Antonio Brown, he's likely not going to see Desmond Trufant, who in my opinion is the best cornerback for Atlanta, and I think that's a smart move. I don't think he has the ability to cover a guy like Antonio Brown. They're going to stack him up or put him up against Martavius Bryant to try and mitigate that deep ball threat. So for that reason, I'm not on Bryant, like a lot of people have been getting lucky with in garbage time over the past few weeks. But Marcus Wheaton is in play for me as a value play. Trying to find his price here real quick. Where is he?
He's starting to get that price.
Yeah, minimum price. He's getting, he's not getting a whole lot of volume of catches, but he is capable of scoring a touchdown. He's kind of working his way back in after falling out a bit. I think in the slot he's got a decent matchup, and at minimum price, I don't hate him this week.
Let's go to the next game here. Stevie, Skins at Giants. My question to you, Odell Beckham is the 4th highest priced receiver on DraftKings this week. He's priced higher than Demaryius Thomas, Alshon Jeffrey, who should see a huge uptick in targets, higher than T.Y. Hilton against Houston, who just gives up touchdowns in bunches, higher than Des Bryant against Philadelphia. How high owned is Odell Beckham going to be in this Millionaire Maker?
I could see Beckham. I don't know. It's tough to say how high Beckham's going to be because, like you said, his 8,400 price tag is very tough. But this matchup it's pretty golden.
He could have 10 catches and 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and it would not surprise me in the least.
Yeah, for me, honestly, I think Beckham could be in the 20% range owned even with this high price tag. I'm going to guess more in the 10% range, though, because I don't see him being that highly owned because of his price tag. Me, personally, I think he's probably a top 3 wide receiver this week. This matchup is golden. Eli played a lot better last week. Sucked the week before, but, definitely bounced back last week. Gets a great matchup. They're giving up 20 fantasy points a game to quarterbacks this season. So I like the Eli, and if I'm going to go Beckham, I'm probably going to match him with Eli. I don't see a reason not to match the 2 this week, especially for GPPs. If you're going to pay up for Beckham, you might as well go ahead and match him up with Eli and have that wide receiver quarterback combo. And when you hit all the goodness, you definitely would get the double the points. I'm not going to be playing Randall this week. I think ever since he had that issue with the coaches where he missed some practices, got benched during that game, I'm just off of him. If you want to go kind of deep, contrarian, sleeper kind of play, Preston Parker I think is in play for GPPs this week. Just because, he has the ability to score 15, 20 fantasy points, and this matchup is definitely a matchup that you could use somebody like Preston Parker and him pay off.
What's your take on the running back situation? Rashad Jennings, the Skins do have a tough run defense, but he's just 5,900 on DraftKings this week. That's pretty cheap. Andre Williams, 5,500. It looks like Jennings, he wasn't listed on the injury report. It's looking like he's going to be healthy. How do you think they're going to divvy that up?
if Jennings plays and we know he's going to play and he's healthy and he says he's healthy, I don't mind him. You say the Washington Redskins have a decent run defense, which they do, but according to Pro Football Focus, they're I think third worst run defense in the league. So a lot of the numbers aren't matching up. Regression, has been coming all season, and they keep playing over their heads. So I could see Jennings having a big game if he's going to get 80% of the carries, but we don't know that going up into the game time. So it's kind of tough. I think if you want to play Jennings, you play him in a tournament. I would not touch him in cash games, though.
Yeah, on a Thursday game on DraftKings, you can obviously late swap, but if you're on FanDuel, I think both the running backs for the Giants are off the board until later in the week. So if you're playing a Thursday game over there, I would avoid them and use somebody else. And then maybe on Sunday you can reevaluate if news comes out. Let's go to the Dolphins. Oh, no. Jeez, the Redskins are so bad. I just wanted to overlook the Redskins completely, Box.
I don't blame you.
RG3. What's he going to do this week?
Well, hopefully he starts, because if he does, that opens the door for a number of different possibilities. If Colt McCoy's in there, then it's not a situation where I'm going to be really targeting anyone from this game outside of Pierre Garçon in a GPP. I think that, RG3, if they're wise, they let him go out there and try and get back in the mix here, especially with Colt McCoy dealing with a neck injury. That's an injury that can affect you big time as a quarterback. So hopefully they just realize, give RG3 the nod. In which case I think Alfred Morris becomes an intriguing play, especially since it doesn't look like Roy Halou is going to play this week, which could see an uptick in Morris's production, especially on third down. Not a great pass-catching running back, but when RG3 is in the game, his yards per carry skyrockets. So I do like that play if RG3 is in. I wouldn't play RG3 regardless, but again, Pierre Garçon, he's got a nice matchup against Cheeky, what's his name here? Cheeky Brown. So he's not a very good, according to Pro Football Focus, not a very good cover corner. Garçon.
Deshaun Jackson's back, though. I think he's going to make it, and Pierre Garçon's going to go back to being just about nothing, I think, this week.
No, I disagree, because they're going to slap Antonio Rodgers-Cromartie on Deshaun Jackson, try and limit that deep threat. So at the very least, I think you're going to see Garçon being targeted in the same fashion he was last week. But, that's no guarantee, so he's still only a GPP play for me.
Jordan Reed, he kind of let me down last week. He's 4,300. That's pretty reasonable for a tight end. Do you think he can get back to the performance he had a couple weeks ago, 9 for 123 against Indianapolis, against the tough defense in St. Louis, only 3 for 25?
Again, it's really only who's in there at quarterback. I think if Colt McCoy is in there, I know he had the big week a couple weeks ago, but this guy Colt McCoy is not a guy that I'm going to be targeting a whole lot of complementary skill position players around him with. It's a GPP play, but again, I still think that there's some better plays, some more safer options at various price points, or even around the same price that we'll get to later, for you to mess around with Jordan Reed.
All right, Stevie, let's go to the next game here. Dolphins at Pats. The Patriots. It's Tom Brady. I expect to see some LeGarrette Blount in this game. The Dolphins they've gotten ran on. The power running game seems to be getting to them. So I like LeGarrette Blount here if I got to pick a running back. It's always dicey for the Patriots. And then it's Julian Edelman, it's Gronk. Both those guys I think are great plays. I expect the Patriots to kind of crush the Dolphins here in a rivalry game.
Yeah, I'm a Dolphins fan, so this is tough for me. We really need to win this game to stay alive in the playoffs.
You got no chance. No chance going into New England.
I don't see it happening. So they definitely beat them week 1, which was super surprised to everybody. But for me, I don't know if I'm going to be targeting this game too much. I could see, New England getting out and getting ahead in this game and just really putting the, smackdown on the Dolphins. So not going to be targeting too much. If I'm going to target this game, it's going to be tournaments. It's going to be Brady-Gronk combos. It's going to be Blount. I'm not a big fan of Vereen this week. Like you said, the Dolphins cannot stop the power run game. So Blount could have a 2-touchdown game very easily this week. So if I'm going to target somebody, it's going to be him, or I'm going to go with a Gronk-Brady combo. But I'm going to get off of Edelman. He had a big week last week. Usually that drives his ownership percentages way up. So I think I'm gonna play the fade for the most part on Edelman this week.
Boggs, real quick, your take on the Patriots. They're a popular team. What do you think is going to happen with them this week?
It's really only LeGarrette Blount for me. I think that you guys were spot on when you said that they're just going to run it up the gut with him all game long. So something around the same amount of touches I think is in order for him. And outside of tournaments like Stevie said, the Brady Gronk combination is pretty much all I'm looking at. But I'm not messing around with any of the wide receivers, especially since Miami's been pretty effective at limiting the opposing team's passing game.
The Dolphins side here, all I have listed is I want no part of any one of the Dolphins this week. Do you want any part of them?
No, not whatsoever. Unless in a tournament, say for a guy like Jarvis Landry, for garbage time purposes.
I could see something like that happening.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the best matchup. He's in the slot, and he's going to be going up against who is it here? Kyle Arrington, who's been effective, but can be beat. And Jarvis Landry, he's still getting targeted. If he can break one for a touchdown, he can make easy value for you in a tournament. But the upside is limited, and again, it's more about me playing him in a tournament, factoring in garbage time. Which can get a little dicey.
Stevie, let's go to the next game here. Raiders at Chiefs. So I asked Boggs who his top running back of the week is. We're going to talk about Jamal Charles here, who's the only guy I'm interested in this entire game. Who is your top running back? Is it Charles, Bell, Murray? Who do you have?
It's really close between Bell and Forte this week for me. Those guys are really neck and neck for me. I'm with you on Charles. It's really a tournament play. I will not play Jamal Charles in cash games this week. He's banged up. We don't know what Andy Reid's going to do most of the time. Charles went out and had a huge first half last week, and we've seen him, very limited in the second half. So
if he's out, Niles Davis, which
everywhere.
How what's he on DraftKings? He's got to be 3,000 or something like that, probably, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if he's out, Niles Davis is going to be. What, 80% owned in the Millionaire Maker? Would you want to fade him in some lineups?
No.
No, I would. If we know Charles is out and we're playing the Millionaire, he will probably be in 50% of my teams. I'll go a 50% share with Niles Davis because
you never know what Andy Reid can do.
Yeah, it really comes down to Niles Davis facing a defense that gives up the fourth most fantasy points to running backs this year. And getting a full share of runs against that team, it's really hard to fade him. But on a tournament like that, you have to play the fade a little bit. You can't go all in on just one player. You can, it just doesn't usually work out that well for you.
Niles Davis, what was he? The blues singer?
Niles Davis.
Something.
Niles sounded better.
Niles Davis. Boggs, do you have any interest in the Raiders? Latavius Murray. He got, the coaches were saying he wasn't going to get a full workload, and then bam, he gets a full workload. They were up in the game, which kind of led to it. Any interest in him as a cheap play at 4,000 on DraftKings?
Well, before I get to Murray, I do want to kind of disagree with you guys a bit. I think there's a lot to like on Kansas City's side of the ball this week, outside of Jamal Charles. I'm not going to be playing him pretty much
Stevie,
anywhere.
This is the part of the show where I asked Boggs how many beers has he drank already.
Look, I gave you shit a couple weeks ago, but I think this is the first week that a wide receiver for Kansas City gets a touchdown.
No.
I think Dwayne Bowe at a near minimum price is an intriguing tournament play. I also think Kelsey is in play. And how about the Niles Davis Chiefs D stack in this Millie Maker? Niles Davis is a kick returner. He's very effective at it, and I think regardless, he's going to get some action in this game, even if Charles goes. But to even disagree with you guys more, if Charles is out, Niles Davis will be in 100% of my lineups across the board, and I won't even think twice about it. But going to the flip side, Latavius Murray isn't play for me. I'm not necessarily a believer, kind of like in the same boat as Beer Makers fan. Like, what has he done? But if he can get a full workload, the Kansas City D, it's stout, but it's more stout in the red zone. That's where they have most of their, that's where everyone gets a little afraid of them. But he can break a couple long runs like we saw against this very same Chiefs D a while back. I don't hate him at that price, especially from a pure volume standpoint. If he's going to get 25 touches, I think you've got to at least consider him.
Yeah, you saw he had the speed. Real quick, guys. Travis Kelce, Steven, we didn't talk about him at all. He had a huge game last week against the Cardinals, which are, they're notoriously bad against the tight end. Can you go back to the well this week?
Yeah, I'll go back to the well with Kelce. I don't mind him. Oakland's 17th against tight ends this season, so he gets another plus matchup, very slight plus matchup, nothing like he had last week. But him and Alex Smith seem to be on the same page. Just he's lacking in touchdowns, so he's a type of play that I wouldn't play in my cash games, but his upside is definitely there for tournaments because if he scores, add a score onto what he did last week, and he's one of the top tight ends. So I like him more for tournaments. I like the Kansas City D as well. I know Boggs mentioned them. So this Oakland offense, I don't even know how they. That just tells you how bad San Francisco is. San Francisco is this bad of a football team. So Oakland's offense, not very good. So if I'm going to play a defense, I like that stack that you're talking about, Boggs. So, but I like the defense. I like Kelce. Tournament play only. And then I'm all over Davis if Charles sits.
Let's go to the Texans at Colts. We're going to stay with you, Stevie. The Colts here, you got to like Andrew Luck. You got to like T.Y. Hilton. This Texans pass defense, I believe they've given up a touchdown every game of the season, or maybe except for one or something like that. They just get torched on a regular basis. Fire up Andrew Luck. He's one of my top quarterbacks this week.
T.Y. Hilton everywhere.
Yeah.
I think T.Y. Hilton is my number 1 or number 2 wide receiver this week. He has absolutely just dominated the Houston secondary every time he's played them. And he has, if not the best quarterback in the league, throwing them the football.
You mean nine for 223 and a touchdown for 40.3 DraftKings points?
Yeah, and I think
that's
week
6.
Week 16 or week 17 last year, he had a very similar line against the same defense. So, and Houston's defense has given up a touchdown every game except for week 1 against Washington. And I'm all over Andrew Luck. I think he's the top cash game quarterback this week. I think he has one of the best matchups. Houston can't even really stop the run this season. So flipping that. So I'm not really high on any of the Indy running backs is what I was trying to get at. So it's going to be all Luck, all T.Y. Hilton. I like Dante Moncrief this week as well for a tournament option. Reggie Wayne, big time banged up with that torn pectoral muscle or whatever it is.
I will say, I don't know if you saw this just before I checked. He practiced today or he was in a walkthrough, and he wants to play. It's going to come down to Sunday, how he's feeling.
Yeah, that's fine. Even if he plays, I still like Moncrief more. Moncrief has seen a huge increase in snaps over the last 2 games, so I'm still going to take Moncrief over Wayne, even if Wayne suits up.
Boggs, other side of the ball, give me Arian Foster. I think you got to like him, even if the Texans get down, he's still involved in the passing game. So anyway this game goes, he's going to be heavily involved. Fitzpatrick, what's your take on him? I don't think Andre Johnson is going to play this week. DeAndre Hopkins, how many targets is he going to see? 12, 15 if there's no Andre Johnson? I think he has a very high floor this weekend.
No, I would disagree with you, man. He's going up against the best corner in football, and Vontae Davis, who's going to be back this week, rested, assuming he passes the protocol. But, he's itching to get back on the field. It's going to be a long day for DeAndre Hopkins, and really they got to force Andre Johnson to play. And, it's kind of the same story. I'm not trying to make light of concussions, but at the same time, if you're cleared to go, then you're good to go. It's not like a nagging hamstring injury or something that's really going to limit you from going. So I think Andre Johnson, if he plays, is a great play, especially in tournaments, since he's no one's going to be on him, assuming he's out. So if Andre Johnson plays, I like him, but really the only guy I like from this game is Arian Foster. I'm not going to mess around with Fitzpatrick. It's too Jekyll and Hyde. And I'm not going to sniff DeAndre Hopkins at all this week. The only way he has a decent game is if Indianapolis gets up by 20 on these guys, in which they're forced to throw and just feed him the ball. in which case it's just pure garbage time. So I'm not paying. I mean, it's $6,100. It's an attractive price, but assuming Vontae Davis is back, like I said, it's a trap. And so Foster, I expect him to get a heavy workload. It is a big game, so I think this game will be a little bit tighter. I'm not expecting Indianapolis to blow Houston out of the water, but either way, Foster is money.
Let's see here. What was I going to ask you? Foster, in the Millionaire Maker this week, guys, he's going to be very low owned. I'll give you two reasons. One, Matt Forte is $100 less than him, and two, he's $9,100. That's very expensive with the tight pricing on DraftKings. If you're looking to kind of differentiate yourself, I'd be willing to bet he's, well under 10% owned, I think, this weekend. Does that make sense with you, Stevie?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's going to be one of the lower-owned top backs of the weekend. And just a quick note on what Boggs was saying. If Vontae Davis plays and Andre Johnson is out, Demarius Johnson is going to be one of my favorite targets in GPPs this week.
Little sneaky secondary wide receiver for the Texans. I like it.
That's right.
Let's go next game here. It's the game everyone's talking about, guys. Get your money sign ready. Bengals at Browns. Stevie, Johnny Football. Let's talk cash games. He's very reasonably priced on DraftKings. He is 50. What is he? 5,900. Does that sound about right?
Yeah,
5,900. So let me give you a couple guys that are around his price here. You got Sean Hill, probably not. Fitzpatrick. I think Fitzpatrick might even be an option there. You got RG3 at 5,600 if he plays. Kyle Orton in a game he's going to pass 5,500. You got Jake Locker. Who's the guy we were talking about for at 5,000 earlier before the show here? His name Derek Anderson. How high owned is Johnny Football going to be this weekend?
I think he's the highest owned cash quarterback this week. At 5,900, I think a lot of people are going to use him in cash games. And good merit. He could definitely score. My favorite play in this game is Crowell. I think Crowell benefits the most.
I love Crowell.
I think he benefits the most from Manziel coming back. He's going to open up the run game for Crowell so much this week. I'm going back to the well on Josh Gordon. I think Manziel is definitely better at getting the ball to a guy like Josh Gordon than what we've seen out of Hoyer. Hoyer has been a joke. And I'll go back to the well on Josh Gordon this week, but I think my top target in this game is going to be Crowell.
If you're taking a quarterback, would you rather this is a cash game on DraftKings this week, Johnny Manziel or Derek Anderson at $5,000 for $900 less? When the cap's pretty tight, you need some savings.
I'm going to go Derek Anderson if I had to take out of those two. I just like the matchup a little bit better.
Boggs, let's go to the other side of the ball. The Bengals here, their word out of the camp is that they want to feature one running back instead of two here. Gio Bernard, he hasn't really done much. That has me thinking Jeremy Hill. He might see a little uptick in carries this week. The Browns not very good against the run. Are you digging what I'm saying here?
Yeah, absolutely. I still think it's a tad bit risky, and there's no way in hell that they don't get Giovanni Bernard at least somewhat involved in this game. But Hill is emerging as the more complete running back in this system, and is also the guy down at the goal line as well. So I do like Hill a little bit more than Giovanni Bernard. A lot of people like to talk about Bernard and how he's so good in the passing game. Jeremy Hill's not terrible at catching balls either. So I definitely like Hill in this game. I think Cincinnati is going to have to rely on the run in this game because, Cleveland is one of the better pass coverage teams in the league. And there's just no way I think that, A.J. Green's going to get another 11 catches going up against
Joe Hayden, yeah. What about Sanu? You think Sanu can get back involved?
Well, he's the guy on the onset that I kind of thought was interesting.
4,400 on DraftKings this week.
But look, the bottom line is there's just not going to be enough possessions. I think this clock's going to be moving the entire game. I think Cincinnati, like I said, is going to run the ball. I also think Cleveland, they're not going to throw Johnny Football in the fire and let him go out and throw for 300 yards in this game. They're going to be very cautious with him. It's not a good matchup, in my opinion, for Johnny Football. I think that's the reason why they went with Hoyer last week. They were praying that he could somehow, not shit the bed like he did, and then perhaps go into this game where it's a tough matchup. and kind of really escape all the talk. But they put themselves in this situation, poor coaching, and for that reason, it's really only the running backs I'm going to be targeting in this game. I do like Hill a little bit, but again, his upside is going to be limited because Giovanni Bernard is going to get some carries. That's just a simple fact that you're going to have to live with. But I think that there's going to be enough carries to go around that Jeremy Hill could find himself in a good spot here this weekend.
Next game, Jags at Ravens.
I don't mean to interrupt. Don't mean to interrupt.
Stevie, go.
You mentioned Sanu. There's one reason you should not play Sanu, because Williams. Williams is one of the best slot covers in the game, and there's no reason to play Sanu this week.
Yeah, that being said, we don't need to go back and forth about Mohamed Sanu, but James is right. That guy has been the number 2 receiver. He's looking iffy for this week, so I think Sanu will slide back. He's been the guy that can move in and outside. He's gonna get an uptick in targets. I don't think he's gonna play the slot for most of that game, but we'll see. I mean, it's not a situation where I really love Sanu either way.
Punches being thrown over Mohamed.
No, I agree with Boggs. I was trying to stick up with you, Boggs. Now come on now.
Okay.
Next game here, Jags at Ravens, and Stevie. I want to start off with a different type of question for you. There's the obvious plays: Flacco, Forsett, and Smiths. Ravens defense. Now, the Jags, they are notorious for being the team that gives up the most points to defensive slash special teams. But, man, is that pass defense horrific right now. I expect the Ravens to kind of get up early and then the Jags to kind of pile it up some garbage time stats here. Can you use the Ravens defense this week against the Jags?
I'll pass. And there's not a lot of defensive options this week, but I'm still going to pass. Like you said, they're just so bad. And I'm sure Boggs is going to talk about Bortles being a GPP option this week, so I'll let him get into that. Maybe not. We don't know. Who knows? But no, honestly, I can't trust this Baltimore defense right now. A lot of injuries, a lot of issues. Really, the only person that I'm looking up right now is Justin Forsett. If he's 100% go this week, the Jags are giving up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs this year, so he'd be the only target that I want from this game.
Bortles or your boy Derek Anderson you just talked about.
Derek Anderson.
Bortles is $5,200. That's very cheap as well.
Anderson for cash. I like Bortles for GPPs this week.
You mentioned Justin Forsett. If he's fully healthy, you got to like him. What about the receivers here? Torrey Smith with the bulky knee. If he's out again, what's your take on Steve Smith? I think he could be in line for another big game.
Yeah, Steve Smith's in play if Torrey sits. If Torrey plays, I really don't like targeting either one of these guys. And you just kind of hit on who's going to have the big game, and sometimes neither one of them has a big game. Like I said, Forsett over 100 yards the last 5 games, and he's been locked in. This guy's just found the fountain of youth and looks great right now. So he'd be the only guy that I like from this game, and I could see Baltimore just shoving it down Jacksonville's throat. So I like Forsett.
Boggs, the Jags here. Looks like who's the running back there? I forgot his name. Denard Robinson. He's out. It's Toby Gerhart. No thanks on that. So Bortles to Lee, Hearns, and Shorts. Rank those Jags wide receivers for me.
I wish I could. The targets go to Shorts, but Bortles can't hit them. And then every game in garbage time, you almost guaranteed an Allen Hearns touchdown for 2 catches and 50 yards. But really the most consistent option, or at least the one I think is going to have the most success this week, is Marquise Lee, assuming that they're able to get him in some of those crossing patterns that he was notorious for at USC. He's the guy I like the most, and fortunately he's also the cheapest. So I haven't really been paying too much attention because it's not necessarily fun watching Jacksonville each and every week. But Marquise Lee, he's kind of turned his season around here a bit. And we did mention Baltimore's secondary problems. Really any one of those guys are in play. However, I would temper your expectations for all 3 of them, and I wouldn't try and take 2 or more of them in any of your games. I just don't foresee Jacksonville coming in here and just slinging it up and down the field. Part of the problem why Bortles is having these regressions is because they're not letting him throw the ball deep. and that creates an absolute nightmare, especially if you can't run the ball. So I also disagree with Stevie. I think Baltimore defense is a terrific play this week. They're still racking up sacks even without Oti Nagata. Elmas Dumervil leads the league in sacks, and you got a rookie quarterback who's turnover prone, a running game that is going to maybe get 3 yards in this game, and there's just no offensive pop. So I think Baltimore is going to win this game handedly, especially since they kind of need to.
I don't mind using any of these Jags wide receivers in a GPP. If you need a cheap guy,
absolutely.
I think I would rank him Lee, Hearns, and then Shorts. But for a GPP, no one's going to be on Shorts. He's getting a ton of targets. And once in a while, those are going to connect. Maybe it's this week. I think that's going to be a sneaky play. Everyone's going to be on the other 2 guys. Packers at Bills. Kyle Orton, Stevie. Any interest in him in a game at home? They're going to have to be passing a lot. A guy I always like that Boggs always tells me not to like, Fred Jackson. He's Mr. Dependable. He's heavily involved in the passing game. He's going to get plenty of touches. It's just, can he get into the end zone? And then Sammy Watkins, is he on your target list, or are you looking at Robert Woods to have a bounce back game?
I think this is the week that I'm going to roll Sammy Watkins out again. I've been off of him for the most part. Kyle Orton, man, very up and down. Very yeah. I wasn't going to say it, Florida Gator connection there, but wasn't going to absolutely come out and say
this
that.
This is going to be just like last week, where I think they get down and they're going to have to pass. I could see Orton having a very similar game to what he did against Denver.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Fred Jackson having a close game like he did with Denver. I could see him having 6 to 10 targets this week out of the backfield when they're down like he did last week. So I like Fred Jackson. I like Sammy Watkins. I can't pull the trigger on Kyle Orton this week.
If you got to take Fred Jackson, let me find another couple guys. For Jonathan Stewart this week, pretend D'Angelo Williams is out. On DraftKings, it's a $200 difference. Fred Jackson's $200 more. Who would you be taking?
I'd still go Fred Jackson, even if Williams is out. I think Stewart this week is a good week to fade Stewart, coming off of a big week last week.
Boggs, other side of the ball, the Packers. We saw the Bills secondary, or the Bills defense. They kind of lived up to the billing. They slowed down Peyton Manning. They slowed down the receivers. The ultimate GPP play this week. Can you take the Packers this week? I don't think in cash games. I can take Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson. I can't take any of these guys, can you?
Well, I really wish Aaron Rodgers was coming off a tougher matchup in the previous game. He's had some pretty cupcake matchups here, and he hasn't really been under pressure a lot, and that's going to change big time this weekend. The Buffalo Bills at home especially, have been pretty stout all around on defense. And I think Rodgers is going to struggle, maybe through the first quarter, maybe even through the first half. Not necessarily struggle because, the guy is arguably the best quarterback in football. But if you look at his completion percentage when he is under pressure, he's not one of the better quarterbacks in the league, believe it or not. I think he's 5th or 6th in the league in terms of his completion percentage. So a little scary, especially since there are some offensive line woes for that team at the center position. But regardless, he was only about – I took him last week over Breeze in my cash games, and he was only about 10% owned in some of these big-time 50-50s. You can reasonably cut that in half this week. I think he's a terrific play in tournaments because he's still Aaron Rodgers, and I still think Green Bay is going to win this game because they're a better team. The wide receiver I'm going to be targeting this week is Randall Cobb. Disclaimer, I've pretty much been wrong in all of these plays every week in terms of picking which receiver is better, but because they're all good. But Cobb's the guy I like. He's got a little bit of a better matchup. Again, Nelson, I'm not going to say he's not in play, and in a couple of lineups I'm going to scatter, hopefully get some shares of both, but I don't think it's a good week to stack up Green Bay. I think they escape with a narrow victory, but I think they're good enough to get through and win this game.
Any interest in the Packers D this week at home or on the road in Buffalo?
No, I know they're pretty cheap, but all the defenses are pretty much around the same price, and I know it is a decent matchup. Buffalo, not really anything to write home against, but the amount of volume, I expect them to be running the ball. I just don't think Orton, who's a guy who doesn't like to take sacks and also doesn't like to throw interceptions. I guess that's the one good thing he's good at. And, he's not a Florida Gator, by the way, Stevie. I think he's a Purdue Boilermaker, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure?
I'm
I
pretty
thought he
sure.
was a Gator.
We could bet a beer on that.
No, I'm going to look it up, though.
Well, let's move on either way.
Bucks at Panthers. Stevie, you've been talking a couple Panthers, so let's talk about Derek Anderson. Had 230 yards and 2 TDs against the Bucks earlier in the season. The Buccaneers' pass defense, it's not great. It has gotten better since the beginning of the season when they got absolutely shredded by every team. What's your take on Derek Anderson? Is he one of your top plays of the week on DraftKings? Jonathan Stewart, if D'Angelo Williams is out, I think he's still back in play for the price. Price it's not as low as it was last week, but at $5,000, that's certainly playable. And you got to love Calvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen this week.
Yeah, Tampa Bay's defense has given up at least one passing touchdown in every game except for one this season against St. Louis. And I think that's when Austin Davis got his first start or something to that effect, so it wasn't even that much of an accomplishment at that. Coming off of a bad game against Detroit, 311 yards and 3 touchdowns against Stafford and Calvin Johnson. Johnson absolutely dominated them last week, and you can see Benjamin having a really good game this week, and I like Derek Anderson for cash games. He's minimum price pretty much on every site because this Cam Newton injury is something that nobody really expected, and prayers and wishes.
I mean, you didn't see an accident happening so that you roster Derek Anderson. I mean, that's just crazy.
Man, that truck, man, I wouldn't want to have been in that one. So
yeah, that truck looked in bad shape.
But I'm all over Derek Anderson for cash. I'm not going to be using him too much for tournaments. I will sprinkle him in here and there with like a Benjamin stack. I like Olsen as well. Derek Anderson really used Olsen in week 1 against this Tampa defense. He had 8 for 83 in that game. Would have had a huge game if he had that touchdown, so I like that a lot. All right, Jonathan Stewart is really a coin flip for me this week. I like him. I don't love him. I like him more if Williams doesn't play. If Williams plays, I won't be on him at all. He had a huge game last week. He looked really good in that game last week. I used him everywhere last week. He had a great game. Probably the best he's looked in 3 or 4 years, so I like that a lot.
And then the coach says, even if Williams comes back, no, we're going to play them both about the same and not give them a full workload. That makes a lot of sense, Stevie.
It drives you crazy, doesn't it? It drives me crazy. But that's why if Williams is a go and we know he's a go on Sunday, I won't be playing Stewart.
Other side of the ball, the Bucks. What do you think? Vincent Jackson or Mike Evans? Mike Evans catches all the touchdowns. Vincent Jackson went crazy last week. Panthers defense not very scary. It is in Carolina though. I'm not sure if I could be using any of these Buccaneers this week.
I think that might be a mistake. I'm liking a lot from Tampa Bay, believe it or not.
Mike Evans is pretty cheap, 6,600 on DraftKings.
Well, yeah, I mean Mike Evans, the guy's a beast, and he has been. Even with the matchup last week. We saw Vincent Jackson outproduced, but he was still getting, targeted heavily. Scored 2 touchdowns. That's the key. And I'm liking Josh McCown this week. I'm liking Evans. I'm liking Vincent Jackson. And I even like Doug Martin a little bit. Call me crazy. I know you will. But $3,400, he's going to be the guy that gets the most of the workload, in my opinion, assuming game flow goes according to script. I just don't see any way that they throw Derek Anderson in the fire and Carolina gets up by 20, in which case they turn to Terrence West, who's the better pass catcher. But I think Doug Martin's going to get a heavy workload. Carolina, not one of the better run defenses in the league. We're aware of this by now. There's a lot to love in this game, and there's some nice value going around. So I think fading it completely is a mistake. Tampa Bay on the road, at home, who cares? The matchups there. Both these teams suck, especially on defense. I think this has a lot of potential here.
Yeah, I think I was wrong to overlook the Tampa Bay receivers. I think they're both in great spots this week. I have no problem rolling on either one of them. Jets at Titans. Mettenberger, he's a little pesky little fella there, Stevie. He's kind of hanging around. He wants to play. I think it's going to be Jake Locker. Kendall Wright, is he going to play? We're not really sure right now. Washington, who's it, Derek Hagan or Hogan? I forgot how to pronounce it. Though he had a pretty decent game. But the guy I really like, Delaney Walker, 10 targets last week. He just didn't catch any. I'm going to be going back to the well on him.
I really hope Locker starts. I'm ready for Mettenberg era to be over with. Locker is a free agent at the end of the year. He's going to have 3 games. It looks like to show somebody that he can still play, and this is a great matchup to show somebody that he can play. The Jets giving up the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. If Locker plays, I think he's in play for me, especially at his price point across the industry.
He can run too. He's good for 20, 30, 40 rushing yards and a touchdown with how bad their running game is if they get close to the goal line.
Yeah, and Delaney Walker, if Locker plays, Delaney Walker is probably going to be one of the guys to consider for a cash game tight end this week. Yeah. If you look at his stats with Locker early in the season, he was getting 8 to 10 targets a game, a lot better throws than what he was getting with Mettenberger. So I like Walker a lot this week. I'm right there with you on that, Britt. And it looks like Kendall Wright is going to play this week. He did practice today. I don't know if it was limited or not. The report I said is he practiced. So if Wright plays, I think he's the wide receiver that I would go with just because on sheer look what he did with Locker early in the season. He was getting 6 to 8 catches a game with Locker early in the season. So I like Wright. More on DraftKings. I don't know what his price is, but I'm sure it's not too expensive. So, but yeah, Locker and Walker are one of my favorite combos this week.
Wright is $5,000 this week, so that's a little high. He was limited in practice. So if he can get a couple practices in on Friday or Thursday, a full practice, I don't mind Kendall Wright. Boggs, the Jets side. It's all about the run game here. CJ2K, Chris Ivory. Can you use either one of these and feel good about it? Are you targeting those? Percy Harvin looks like he's very questionable at best to play. If he's out, what's your thoughts on Eric Decker as a GPP play? I don't mind Decker. He can really catch those touchdowns.
Yeah, starting with the running backs, we got a Chris Johnson revenge game. Probably one of the better revenge games of the year, if you want to go down that narrative. But really, if you want to be wise and smart about it, Ivory's the better play here. Tennessee's obviously terrible against the run. And they're really terrible against these big bruiser type of backs because they just got these undersized linebackers and really only one guy in that defensive line that's capable of any sort of resemblance of a rush defense. So Chris Johnson, he's the home run hitter. Chris Ivory, they're splitting carries either way, which sucks. Which is why I don't think you really want to take either one in a GPP because the carries are going to go all around, and for that reason, I think it's a pretty safe fade, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Cincinnati. You get these running back by committees in a great matchup. I don't really see either one from either team, one guy emerging from it, and that's the problem. It's all about the upside. So Chris Johnson, if you want to go down narrative street, hey, the Jets are out of it. Maybe they give him 20 carries against his old team and let him run wild, but who knows? I just can't, unless some information comes out. I think Ivory's the better play. And then I'm with you on on Decker. I'm not sniffing Geno Smith by any means, but Decker is definitely in play at a very modest price tag. He should definitely get all the targets, and Tennessee can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass either, so I think they're both in play.
Yeah, Decker had 6 for 89 last week. If Harvin's out, he's pretty much a lock to get 10, 12 targets, I think, this week. Love Eric Decker, but only if Percy Harvin's out. It's kind of a sleeper play if you're looking for a mid-tier price wide receiver. Broncos at Chargers. Boggs, before I get to Stevie, weigh in on your Chargers real quick.
It's not looking good. The outlook is not good. That's what the Magic 8 Ball says. You can let Stevie talk about it because
you just don't want to. You there, Stevie?
I'm here. I thought Boggs lagged out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's just sitting there, with a smug look on his face right now. So we're gonna let you talk about the Chargers.
I'm with him. This San Diego, I guess if you want to kind of factor in garbage time, because I think this is the week that Denver puts their foot on the gas pedal and starts throwing the ball again. I think Rivers to maybe Keenan Allen for a GPP
I love
combo.
me some Keenan Allen this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the only two that I would actually consider in this game. Eddie Royal, Malcolm Floyd, it's one or the other every week, and we never know who it's going to be. Even if one of them has a great matchup, the other guy has a bad matchup, the bad matchup guy will take it. It just doesn't matter. So I'm going Keenan Allen. I like Keenan Allen. He gets Robbie this week, so he has a decent matchup. And Rivers for tournaments. I would not trust Phillip Rivers. He's been too boomer bust this season for cash games.
Any interest in the run game at all? Boggs, we were talking before the show.
No.
Boggs had some choice words for his boy
No.
Ryan Matthews.
I agree. No, I don't like the run game either.
Boggs, real quick, your Chargers. You were nodding your head when I was talking Keenan Allen. I love me some Keenan Allen this week. Do you like Phillip Rivers at all in a game they're probably going to have to throw a lot?
Not really. Rivers is capable of stepping up in big games, but more so when games turn into shootouts. The Chargers hung around pretty much that entire game in New England, surprisingly, due to their defense. But in another game where it could be close, unless Denver comes out and throws it like Stevie thinks, I don't think that Phillip Rivers is a great play this week. But regardless, I love Keenan Allen, and it's kind of the situation where Andy Dalton had a good week last week, but so often he's not a very good quarterback, and all the volume is going to AJ Green. That's what's going to happen with Keenan Allen this week, especially since they can move him around. He's not necessarily tied to one side of the field. I think at least 10 catches, and I'm not trying to go out of line here. At least 10 catches. The touchdown may be questionable, but some yardage on those catches is also in play, in my opinion. And don't sleep on Antonio Gates. He's got a pretty good matchup as well.
At 6,000, you got Keenan Allen. Kelvin Benjamin, 6,200. Let's see. Let me go down a little bit. Vincent Jackson, 5,400. Rank those three guys for me this week.
I still like Allen over them, especially on a full PPR site, since he's really going to be the only option, in my opinion, in this game, especially since the running game didn't do shit last week, and especially in the second half. So they know they're going to have to throw the ball. It's just a matter of, can they try to control the clock, which I don't know if they can in this game. So Keenan Allen's got to be the number one based on the fact he's got a better quarterback throwing him the ball. I like Benjamin as a close second because he's really the only option in that offense. And then Vincent Jackson would be third simply because Mike Evans is going to cut into those targets.
Let's see.
I agree with you. Same order, 100%.
Broncos, Boggs, going up against your Chargers. C.J. Anderson is just a man on fire right now. I haven't really used him much this year. I keep thinking Peyton Manning, and I think they're going to go back to Peyton Manning because it's going to be warm in San Diego. They're going to be passing it around. But in these cold weather games, it's looking like it's going to be the C.J. Anderson show. But I think this week is the Peyton Manning show.
Yeah. The one thing that concerns me is how involved Julius Thomas is going to be, because if you guys have been watching these games, they bring in Virgil Green, and that's why they're having success running the ball. He's a terrific run blocker, big body, almost an offensive lineman. But if they want to work in Julius Thomas some more, that could hinder C.J. Anderson just a bit. I mean, the Chargers, by every metric and all of that, don't have a very good run defense. And if Corey Liuget, who's one of their defensive tackles, is out of the game this week, that could certainly change. But I think that from the Denver side of the ball, that they try and get Peyton Manning back on track. According to Pro Football Focus, they think that Demaryius Thomas is going to be matched up against Sharice Wright. I can almost guarantee you that's not going to happen. He's going to be up against Brandon Flowers, who's been a terrific cornerback all season long, which opens the door for Emmanuel Sanders to have a big game. That's the wide receiver I'm going to be targeting, and more. I'm going to have more shares of this week, especially since he's about $800 cheaper. But I think Peyton Manning's in play. I mean, when's the last time you saw him under 9K? When's the last time you saw him under 10K? on DraftKings, and at $8,900, I really think he's definitely in play. But kind of going back to C.J. Anderson, got to be up there in your top 5. His price is still attractive at $7,800. He's going to get all the volume again. And if you go back to the way this game was played back in Denver, Ronnie Hillman had a great day. And I think we're all aware that C.J. Anderson's the better back at this point. So you got to fire up Anderson as well.
I think Anderson's going to be very highly owned. He's kind of like in this tier all by himself of, right below the top guys. Jamal Charles, 8,700. He's kind of the low end of the top tier. And then you go down to 7,800 on C.J. Anderson, and he's going, Eddie Lacy in a tough matchup, probably not. Forsett at 7,400 is interesting if he's feeling good. There's just not really anyone I want really below C.J. Anderson until you get way down a lot cheaper. So I think he's going to be very heavily owned this week, and rightfully so. He never gets off the field, and he's just been really producing. So I think I'm going to be targeting him a lot this week. Let's go to the next game. What do we got? Vikings at Lions here, Stevie. It's kind of the Joik Bell show. Reggie Bush, the Lions, he's always hurt. And the Lions have kind of like figured out, hey, we paid Joik Bell all this money. Maybe we should probably give him the football. And it's starting to work for him. Do you like Joik Bell against this Vikings defense this week?
Yeah, back-to-back 20-plus fantasy games. Even had 20 touches last week with Bush back. So I don't think Bush is going to hurt Bell at all. If I'm going running back in this game, it's going to be Bell. I think I'd more of a tournament contrarian play because there's just so many good running backs this week that a lot of people are going to overlook Bell, even though he's had 2 really good games. I think the Stafford-Calvin combo, still very popular in tournaments. Their price is getting up there, and I'm one of the biggest fans of Calvin Johnson just because I don't think there's a corner in the football that can stop him. So, me personally, I think this is the week that I'll have a few shares of him. His price is just too high for me. Stafford is really a Johnson combo thing for me. I don't think Stafford excels unless Johnson excels. So Stafford, he really, I don't know.
It's clear to me Stafford, he is not the top-tier quarterback everyone thinks he is. He very heavily relies on Calvin Johnson being the best wide receiver in the game.
That's true. That's true. I don't want to jump in here, but he hasn't had to be. The Detroit has one of the better records in the game because their defense is keeping them in games. He hasn't been relied on to throw 300 yards coming from behind like they always were in previous years. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, and you speak of that defense. That defense is definitely in play against this Vikings offense this week. I think they're one of the top defenses. And honestly, if you look at the numbers over the last couple of years with Calvin and Stafford is by far one of the best players, one of the best quarterbacks at getting his top player involved. And he just, hey, Calvin, here, I don't care if you have 2 people on you. I'm going to throw you the ball and you're going to catch it. So Calvin Johnson, always in play for me. Stafford, more of a Calvin combo play for me. And with their price, they could be lower owned. With the 2 weeks that Calvin's had back-to-backs, I think this is a week that he's going to be, 20 to 30% owned.
Any interest in Golden Tate at 6,300? You have guys like Benjamin. We just talked Keenan Allen just below him. I think he's going to be very low owned. Any interest there?
Yeah, I agree with you being low owned. Decent cornerback wide receiver matchup for him this week.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to go off of Keenan Allen, because I agree Keenan Allen at that price point, right around the same, is going to be very highly owned compared to Golden Tate. If you want to go against the grain, I could see going Tate. The targets are there, and like you said, this is a great matchup for him, wide receiver combo. So, I could see it. I don't love it. I will use him a little bit where I'm not using Allen because I like Allen. He's one of my top guys this week. So if I want to go against the grain on some of these big tournaments, I think Tate is one of the best guys to go with.
Boggs, on the Vikings side, any interest in the defense on the road in Detroit? Other than that, it's Charles Johnson, and that's about it. I want no part of the rest of this team.
I don't want anyone, not even Charles Johnson. I know he's been good. He is a good receiver, but if there is someone I would take in this game, it'd probably be Jennings based on the matchup. But Teddy Bridgewater is going to be running for his life in this game. Detroit, they're going to be throwing everyone at him under the fire. So, this game doesn't necessarily have blowout involved, for me, but it has Detroit owning Minnesota in every area of the game. I could easily see like a 23-6 game. Somewhere where Detroit's not scoring 50, but Minnesota just has no shot in this game, in my opinion.
Not last game. We got 3 games left. Niners at Seattle. Stevie, Seattle defense. We have him going up against Colin Crapper pick this week. That's kind of how I feel about Colin Kaepernick right now. You've got to love the Seattle defense at home against the Niners, who just can't do anything right now. Russell Wilson, we saw what he could do when he's allowed to be Russell Wilson. He had a great game last week. I think he might even be able to repeat that this week at home against the Niners. I think he's kind of a sleeper quarterback pick this week. Along with Marshawn Lynch, the Niners can be beaten on the ground. Those are my 3 picks this week for Seattle.
Yeah, I think Seattle defense is my top defense this week. San Francisco, they just got beat by Oakland. We already got into how bad San Francisco's playing right now. Hardball, he's on his way out. Lynch, GPP play for me. Wilson, cash or GPP. I think he has a good game this week. He adds that 4 to 6 point bonus for running. He just continues to pick up extra running points. So I like him for that. I like his floor, to be honest with you. He's been one of the safest cash game quarterbacks all season. So continues to fly under the radar this year. And Seattle's defense, my top play in this game.
Let's go the Niners side here, Boggs. Very easy. Don't take anybody.
Yep. Pretty much in agreement with you.
Done. Next game.
Yeah.
Cowboys at Eagles. Sorry, Boggs, you don't get to talk this round.
I don't need to, man.
Cowboys at Eagles. Stevie, this game is the opposite. It's start all your Cowboys, start all your Eagles. I'm expecting a ton of points in this game. If you can name a play, I like it this week.
I think this is going to be the week that if you're sitting in the top of a GPP after the 4:30 games,
you have no chance.
You have zero chance unless you have 3 or 4 guys sitting on top. You're in trouble. So, yeah, I think Sanchez has a great bounce back game this week. Even though he didn't have a terrible game last week, I think he has a better game this week. Macklin's in play, Matthews is in play, McCoy is in play. Like you said, start everybody from Philly except for the tight end situation. Give me any of the wide receivers. Give me the running back. Give me the quarterback. I'm all for it.
Real quick, NBA. Wow. Tonight, if you manage to win money on NBA tonight, you are a very good NBA player. My lineup, I don't think my team has moved a point in the last half an hour. So,
yes, I faded NBA tonight. Yes.
Boggs, the other side, the Cowboys. Tony Romo, Dez Bryant, DeMarco Murray. It's those 3. Do you have any interest in Jason Witten or any kind of sleeper play in the Cowboys? I can't do it even in a huge tournament. It's those 3 and those 3 only, and start them with confidence.
Yeah, I'm actually not really that high on DeMarco Murray this week. Not necessarily. I mean, more based on his price, but we talk about Bell, Foster, Forte. I even have C.J. Anderson and even Justin Forsett higher than DeMarco Murray. Eagles' defense, run defense is good. Let's face it. I mean, they've got a good run defense. So I think if Dallas wants to win this game, they're going to have to lean on Tony Romo. But that being said, despite a pretty shitty Thanksgiving game, he's getting healthier by the week. Coming off a good game in his last game against the Bears. I think that Tony Romo to Dez Bryant is a combination that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to this week. Like I said, I think if Dallas wants to win this game, they're going to have to feed Dez Bryant the ball. So the Tony Romo, Dez Bryant stacks in play for me this week. And, my sleeper play last week, Cole Beasley, not going to get any love from me this week. But Terrence Williams, minimum price. Another one of these minimum price guys. I got the best minimum price wide receiver for you guys in the next game. But Terrence Williams, GPP flyer, I think that if Dallas, like I predict, is going to throw the ball, then Terrence Williams is going to have to get involved. And he's got a decent matchup against Fletcher, the cornerback for Philadelphia, who's been the one weakness in that defense. So I don't love it, but and he's been trending down for quite some time. But like I said, Dallas is if they're gonna win this game, they're gonna have to throw the ball, and it's only gonna take so long before they start double covering Des Bryant.
Yeah, I love Romo to Dez. I love every play from this game. Start all your guys with it. If you got to pay up for one of these guys and if you don't feel comfortable, I am all over this game. And I'm going to be all over a lot of people on the Monday Night Hammer game, Saints at Bears. Alshon Jeffrey's out, Stevie. Or no, Brandon Marshall's out. Alshon Jeffrey is going to see a huge uptick in targets. So is Martellus Bennett. Matt Forte's in play. And Jay Cutler. Love me some Jay Cutler in this game. Every one of these guys, especially on the Bears side, I love them this week.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Philly game. I love everybody in this game as well. Forte is a very, very close to Le'Veon Bell second for running back this week. The Saints, 39, 39, 41. Fantasy points given up over the last 3 games of running backs.
That doesn't sound very good, Stevie.
They cannot stop the run right now. It is not very good for the Saints. Just anybody is running over the Saints right now. So Matt Forte, very, very close. I'm trying to look up a price on Wilson this week at a wide receiver for a cheap option.
I'm sure he's been price.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Is that your guy, Boggs?
It is.
Didn't mean to steal your thunder, but
that's all right.
Everybody's going to have Jeffrey, and if you want to kind of go against everybody, go a Cutler-Wilson stack this week. I think it's going to be very low owned. I think Wilson, even with Marshall out, is still going to be very low owned this week. So I like Wilson. I think people will lean more towards, Josh Morgan or somebody like that. But I'm all over Wilson with Cutler. And Jeffrey, like you said, probably one of the safest guys for cash games this week is Jeffrey, because he's going to see 10-plus targets, and we can just chalk that up on the top.
I would take the over on 10 targets.
I would take the over on 15 targets, so yeah, I'll definitely take the 10 over.
Martellus Bennett, real quick. He's the 3rd highest priced tight end. You got Gronkowski in a real tough matchup against Miami. They're the #1 tight end defense. Jimmy Graham hasn't done anything this week, lately. Maybe that shoulder's still giving him some trouble. He has a great matchup at 6,300. Would you take Jimmy Graham or Martellus Bennett at $400 cheaper?
I would definitely pay the extra $400 for Jimmy Graham. Chicago, Boggs is going to tell you this, but Chicago cannot stop tight ends, so I would pay the extra $400 for Graham this week.
Boggs, Drew Brees. Last week, they told me, play Drew Brees in cash games, guys. It's the safest thing you can do. Somehow I survived a Drew Brees debacle on my FanDuel cash games because I was all in on Le'Veon Bell. Can you use Drew Brees this week and feel comfortable against Chicago on the road in a game there might be some cold weather? I have no problem using Drew Brees.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand if he's not your #1 cash game play. I don't even know if I have him as my #1 cash game play. I think going cash game cheap at quarterback is probably the right strategy this week, but he's certainly in play. The week before in Pittsburgh, it wasn't nice and warm and sunny out there. I just chalk it up as a bad game. It happens. It's sports, and Drew Brees, they're not out of it yet. It's pretty much coming down to a must-win game against the Bears team that is out of it. I think it's a good bounce-back week for Drew Brees. And, it probably was a blessing in disguise. And this is probably the 2nd or 3rd time I've said this season about Drew Brees. But regardless, the guy still is going to produce. And I think you go right back to the Drew Brees, Kenny Stills combination, sprinkle in some Jimmy Graham. But the run game, that's where I'm a little concerned here, because I think Chicago's going to try and play spoilers in this game. I think that there's a lot of scoring potential in this game, that being on a Monday night. So I'm not going to be targeting any of the guys in the run game, despite having a good matchup themselves. But
that's crowded backfield. Everyone's coming back now.
Exactly, and it's all going to be dictated on game flow, and Chicago, I think, is going to be able to hang in this game. So for that reason, I'm off the running game. But Colston, he's got a decent matchup. More of kind of like a safer type cash game play. Stills has the upside. And then Jimmy Graham, If they don't feed him the ball this week, either he's significantly hurt, Peyton is a moron, which I don't think, or there's some kind of the conspiracy theorists will be out, because if Jimmy Graham in this matchup can't be the number one tight end of the week, then something is wrong and needs to be corrected, whether it's in the front office, head coach, or somewhere in the organization. But regardless, Jimmy Graham has to be one of the top tight end of this week, and I think he's due for a monster week. And before we sign off here, Marcus Wilson, my surefire min-price play of the week. I mean, you're telling me a guy who's good he's a good receiver. He's getting more involved each and every week in a pass-first offense against one of the worst defenses in general in the league. There's no way he can't have himself a good game this week. So look out for Marcus Wilson. Hopefully, he pays off, but I think he's in for a monster week this week. Not monster, but again, I think at 3K, there's no way in hell he doesn't get at least 15 points.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for the show this week. Don't forget on DraftKings, this week they have the $3 million Millionaire Maker. First place is $1 million. Let's see what the payout structure on the second place, $150,000. Top 25,000 or so people get paid. It's just a huge tournament. Make sure to go get in that. They also have the first part of their their $15 or $10 million championship that they're doing with a $300,000 Hot Route Championship. That's a $100 buy-in, $300,000 in prizes, and for you guys without huge bankrolls, the Quarter Arcade Championship, you can turn 25 cents into $2,000 this week over on DraftKings. Boggs, anything you want to say? Are you going? I know you said you had to go to the Ducks game tonight.
I got tickets on the glass, man. You'll see pictures I post on Twitter. Can't pass those up. But, good luck this weekend, Grinders. And, Stevie, it's good working with you, man. Good luck on that recovery there.
Yes,
yeah, it'd be
good
all right.
luck.
It'd be all right. And just so you guys know, 71 days until spring training starts. Just letting you know.
Hell yeah, baby.
New pitchers and catchers report.
I would actually be able to tell you that if I looked before, but spring training, 71 days. Derek Anderson and Cash with Le'Veon Bell. Done.
All right, now Stevie, do you know the signature, the out for the show this week?
No, I do not.
All right, so normally Boggs likes to cut in and steal my my exit of the show. So we out ya. So I'm gonna sign off and I'm gonna let you say that. You ready for it?
I'm in.
All right, Grinders. Thanks for watching. This was the NFL First Look from my co-host Paul Boggslit Arrington and Stephen Young. Stevie, TPFL. What are we, Stevie?
We out ya.